Hey y'all, welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. This week was super fun because I made Halloween themed dinners. So first up is this chicken boodle soup. So the noodles are supposed to resemble bats and the carrots are cut into pumpkins. So I'm going to show you how I put this together. So first off, I cut up my veggies. So for the carrots, I just cut two little slits in the top to kind of form the stem. Then I sliced them. And then I also cut up two stalks of celery. I just recently discovered that I like to cook celery. And also I cooked up some bow tie noodles, drained that off, and I rinsed that with cold water. And I tried to get off all the water that I could. And then I added in some black food coloring into this big Ziploc bag. And I did put in several drops. And I just gave that a good shake. And I let that set for 1 hour to kind of soak up. And then for the chicken noodle soup, I just winged the recipe. I didn't follow anything. So I just threw in some butter and I sauteed my carrots and celery. And then I seasoned those with some lemon pepper. And then I added in my chicken broth. I used one of those big boxes. I'm pretty sure it's about 6 cups. And then I tossed in a whole rotisserie chicken that I shredded up with some onion powder and some garlic powder. I also added some black pepper. And then I gave that a good stir. And then I tossed in a bay leaf. And then last minute, I decided to add in some of this Better Than Bouillon paste just for some extra flavor. Then I popped my lid on and cooked until the veggies were tender. So once the hour was up for the noodles, I put it back in my strainer and rinsed it with cold water to get rid of that excess dye. And then I put it in the bottom of my bowl. And then I topped it with the chicken soup that turned out so good. And the black dye does not affect the taste of the noodles at all if you are worried about that like I was. So up next, I made some meatball mummies. So I just took some fully cooked frozen meatballs and I let those thaw out in that little Ziploc bag. And then I took some skewers and I placed 3 meatballs on each one. The recipe said that you could use dry pieces of spaghetti noodles if you wanted to do that instead. So I just repeated that until all my meatballs were gone. And then I used this Pillsbury pizza crust pizza dough. And I just rolled that out and I took a little pizza cutter and I sliced those into thin little strips. And then I just took that dough and I wrapped it around the meatballs, trying to kind of crisscross it. And I did leave a little gap at the top for the eyes to go on later. And I just placed that on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And I took out all of the little sticks. And then I had some leftover dough, so I just kind of rolled those up into little garlic knots. Then I just baked those at 350 for 20 minutes, and then the recipe said to brush it with melted butter, but I had some garlic parmesan butter in the fridge, so I just melted that, and I brushed everything with that, and then I used some candy eyeballs, so to get them to stick, I used some mayo and a little toothpick to spread on the back of the eyeballs, and it worked. They stuck good. And here is what they looked like when they were done. They came out so cute and they were delicious. You can serve these with a side of marinara for dipping, or you could do like I did and just use some spaghetti sauce over some fun-shaped pasta. And I topped that with some Parmesan cheese and I served that with peas. Such an easy and fun Halloween dinner idea. On Wednesday, I made a Deadman meatloaf, so I wanted to use a recipe that I know that would hold up good. So in this bowl, I have 1.5 pounds of ground beef, some ketchup, some oats, some Worcestershire sauce, and A1 sauce, salt, pepper, and some beaten eggs. I'm pretty sure that's it, but I will have this exact recipe linked in the description box. And then for the not so fun part is mixing it up. The best way to mix it is with your hands, just to make sure that everything gets mixed well. Your hands will freeze off, but it is so worth it in the end. And then I just have a foil-lined cookie sheet that I sprayed with some cooking spray. And then I just take my meatloaf and I start to shape it into a little man. I also made some mashed potatoes to go along with the meatloaf, and a few of you requested for me to show how I make my mashed potatoes. So I've never followed a recipe. I've always just kind of done my own thing, but I always start off by peeling some russet potatoes. And then I just rinse the potatoes off, and then I slice those and dice them into 4/4, and I just toss those into a sauce pot and cover them with water, and I turn my heat on high. And once those start boiling, I add in a good healthy pinch of salt, and then I just cook those until they're fork tender. Then I drain those and put them in a mixing bowl and add in some butter along with some milk and some salt and pepper. Sometimes I'll add garlic powder, but I didn't on this day. And then I just take my electric mixer and I just mix that until they are fluffy and smooth. Normally, this is where I would stop, but since I'm doing the Halloween theme, I did a few extra steps. So I just took all of those mashed potatoes and I poured those into a pie plate, and then I spread those out the best that I could. And then I topped it with some sharp cheddar cheese. The more the better, right? And then I also topped it with some cooked and crumbled bacon, and then I just popped that under my broiler until it was all melted, and then I let it sit for about 10 minutes to cool. And then I started to pipe on a sour cream spider web. And then I just popped in some little spider rings, and yes, I did wash those first. After the 40 minutes, I drained off all of that grease, and I popped it back in for about 15 more minutes, and I kind of overcooked it a little bit. I'm used to cooking my meatloaf for at least an hour, but it cooked really fast on that cookie sheet, so definitely just do the 40 minutes. I just mixed up a little sauce mixture of ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and brown sugar, and I just kind of put that in the center and down the side to kind of, resemble blood. And then I stuck a knife in the middle. And then for the eyes, I used olives. And then for the mouth, I just used some corn kernels. So I thought this turned out so funny and cute. I also served it with some extra corn. And yeah, this was a super delicious meal. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes is definitely one of my favorite meals. On Thursday, I made a buffalo chicken spider ring. So first off, I just baked up some chicken breast. And then in this mixing bowl, I have some cream cheese that I microwaved for a little bit just to make it easier to stir. And then I added in my shredded chicken. And then I also added in some buffalo sauce, and this recipe is not spicy at all because it is using such a small amount of buffalo sauce, so it can definitely be kid-friendly. I also added in some ranch, and then I just mixed that together well. And then I used 2 cans of crescent rolls, and I lay those out on a sprayed pizza pan. And then I'm just going to lay those out into kind of a circle shape, and then I'm going to put the filling on top it with cheese, and fold it over. So for the spider legs, I'm going to be using these Pillsbury breadsticks, and these were not easy to find, but I did find them at Meijer's. And I just lay those on a sprayed cookie sheet with foil, and I made those into little V shapes, and I just threw those in the oven along with the buffalo chicken ring. So I just stuck the breadsticks into the filling, and in the middle, I just filled it with some shredded lettuce along with 2 olives for eyes. I think this turned out so cute, and this is such a delicious recipe. I will have it linked in the description box. I just sliced it up with a pizza cutter, and I served it with some fries that I cooked in my air fryer along with some ketchup. On Friday, we went on a date night with our buddies. We went to Cheddar's. We got the spinach and artichoke dip. And there's Alicia and John, Josh, Justin, and Kim. I got the buffalo chicken tenders, a loaded baked potato, and some broccoli and cheese casserole. It was so good. On Saturday, I made a spooky shepherd's pie. So I started off by browning and draining 1 pound of ground beef, and I seasoned that up with some garlic powder and some Montreal steak seasoning. And then I added in some Worcestershire sauce, or a lot. I love that stuff. And I just gave that a good stir. And then I added in some flour. This is what's going to thicken up your sauce later. And then I added in some ketchup and some beef broth. gave that another stir, and I just let that simmer until the sauce thickened. And then I added in some frozen peas and carrots. And that is it for the meat mixture. So I just spooned that into a 2-quart casserole dish, and I just spread that out. And then I made some homemade mashed potatoes, and I just put that in a piping bag and just cut off the end. And I piped 6 little ghosts onto the shepherd's pie. And then I put frozen peas for the eyes, and I sprinkled some shredded cheese around the filling. I forgot to get a clip of the whole casserole after it was baked, but here's my plate. I served it with some cornbread. I did try to make some little cornbread ghosts using a ghost cookie cutter, but that did not turn out good for me, so oh well, but that is our dinner for Saturday. Sunday was my daughter's birthday party, so we had pizza, some cake and ice cream, and some buffalo chicken dip with chips. But that wraps up this week. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some ideas. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.